A frightened waitress quietly slipped a note onto a biker's table. Moments later, the entire restaurant fell silent. This is the story of a brave young woman who dared to ask for help despite being in danger, and how the unexpected reaction of a few strangers changed everything. Sarah's hands trembled as she carried the coffee pot through Miller's diner. The bruise on her left arm was hidden beneath her long sleeve, but the pain reminded her with every movement. She'd been working the night shift for 3 months, ever since her boyfriend Marcus started showing up at her apartment, demanding money. Tonight, he sat in the corner booth, watching her every move. His eyes followed her from table to table, and she knew what would happen when her shift ended. He'd been texting her all evening, telling her exactly how much money she needed to hand over. The tips in her apron pocket felt heavy with the weight of what they represented. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Goodness Effect. Marcus had shown up 30 minutes into Sarah's shift. He didn't order anything, just sat there drinking water and staring. When she'd tried to ignore him, he sent a text that made her blood run cold. "You better have my money, or your little brother's gonna have problems at school tomorrow." Sarah's younger brother Danny was only 14. The thought of Marcus going anywhere near him made her sick. She'd tried everything to get away from Marcus. She changed her phone number twice, but he always found her. She stayed at her mom's house, but he showed up there too. Her manager at the diner, Pete, had asked about the bruises, but Sarah lied. She said she was clumsy, that she'd fallen down some stairs. The truth was too complicated, too dangerous to share. Marcus had friends, people who scared her even more than he did. The diner was unusually busy for a Tuesday night. A group of bikers had pulled up an hour ago, their motorcycles lined up outside like chrome soldiers. Sarah had been nervous about serving them at first. Their leather jackets and rough appearances reminded her too much of Marcus's friends, but these men were different. They were polite, thanking her for refills and leaving their table clean. The biggest one, a man with a grey beard and kind eyes, had even complimented her service. Now, as she walked past Marcus's booth with a tray of food, he grabbed her wrist. His grip was tight, purposefully painful. "Don't forget what I said," he whispered. "I'll be waiting outside when you're done. You got 2 hours to figure out how you're getting me that $500. Sarah nodded, pulling her arm free. She could feel the eyes of other customers on them, but no one said anything. No one ever did. She delivered the food to table 7, her mind racing. $500 was more than she'd make in tips all week. Marcus knew that, but he didn't care. This wasn't really about money. It was about control, about keeping her afraid. She glanced toward the bikers' table. They were laughing about something, passing around pictures on a phone. They seemed so normal, so safe. For a moment, she wondered what it would be like to ask someone for help. The idea seemed impossible at first. What would she even say? How could she explain that her ex-boyfriend was threatening her family? But as Marcus sent another text with a photo of Danny leaving school, Sarah knew she was out of options. She had to do something, and she had to do it tonight. Sarah's best friend Rachel had been telling her for months to go to the police, but Marcus had made it clear what would happen if she tried. He'd shown her messages from his cousin who worked at the county jail. "I got eyes everywhere," he'd said. "You think the cops can protect you? Think again." Sarah believed him. Marcus had grown up in this town. He knew people, had connections that terrified her. The police seemed like a risk she couldn't afford to take. But watching him sit there, smugly drinking his water while she worked, something inside Sarah changed. She thought about Danny, about how scared he'd been last week when Marcus showed up at his basketball practice. Her little brother had asked if everything was okay, and Sarah had lied again. She was so tired of lying, so tired of being afraid. The weight of it all pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Pete called from the kitchen that order 12 was up. Sarah grabbed the plates, her mind made up. She would ask for help, but not from the police. Not yet. She needed someone who could act fast, someone Marcus wouldn't expect. Her eyes drifted back to the bikers' table. They'd been here for over an hour now, clearly in no hurry to leave. The grey-bearded man was talking seriously with the others, and something about the way they listened to him suggested he was their leader. During her break, Sarah grabbed a napkin and a pen. Her hands shook as she wrote, "The man in booth 4 is my ex. He's threatening my family. He's waiting outside to hurt me when I leave. Please help. I'm desperate." She read it 3 times, crossing out words and rewriting them. It sounded crazy. These men were strangers. They had no reason to help her, and every reason to stay out of it. but she was out of choices. She folded the napkin small enough to fit in her palm. The bikers had ordered dessert, which meant they'd be here at least another 20 minutes. That gave her time to build up the courage to actually do this. Marcus was on his phone now, probably texting his friend. She recognized his body language, the way he sat when he was planning something. Whatever he had in mind for tonight, it was worse than just taking her tips. Sarah refilled coffee at 3 different tables, her heart racing. Every time she walked past the bikers, she chickened out. What if they laughed at her? What if they told her to handle her problems? Or worse, what if they tried to help and Marcus hurt them? She didn't want anyone else getting pulled into this mess. But then Marcus caught her eye and drew his finger across his throat. It was a small gesture, easy to miss if you weren't looking. But Sarah saw it, and she knew he meant it. That was when she decided she'd rather take the risk than spend one more night living in fear. She grabbed the coffee pot one more time and headed toward the biker's table. This was it. In the next few seconds, everything would either get better or much, much worse. Sarah approached table 9 with the coffee pot, her pulse thundering in her ears. The grey-bearded man looked up and smiled. "Just a warm-up, thanks," he said, pushing his cup toward her. His voice was rough but friendly, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd lived a full life. Sarah poured the coffee, her hands surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. As she set the pot down to add cream to another biker's cup, she slipped the folded napkin onto the table beside the grey-bearded man's plate. He didn't notice at first. Sarah moved to the next customer, refilling cups and trying to act normal. Her chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing all the air from her lungs. She couldn't back at the table. If she did, Marcus might notice something was wrong. He was watching her again, his phone down now, his full attention on her every move. She forced herself to smile at a customer asking about pie, her voice somehow calm as she listed the available flavors. From the corner of her eye, she saw the grey-bearded man pick up the napkin. He unfolded it slowly, his expression changing as he read. His jaw tightened, and he glanced up, "Say in the diner." Sarah busied herself at the coffee station, her back to both Marcus and the bikers. She heard low voices from table 9, the men talking quietly among themselves. She'd done it. She'd actually asked for help. Now she just had to wait and see if it would cost her everything. One of the younger bikers stood up, and Sarah's stomach dropped. What if they were leaving? What if they wanted nothing to do with her problems? But the man just walked to the restroom, his Hess taking him past Marcus's booth. He moved casually, not looking at Marcus at all, but Sarah knew he was sizing up the situation. When he returned to the table, he leaned down and whispered something to the grey-bearded man. Pete rang the bell for order 15. Sarah jumped, her nerves completely shot. She picked up the plates and delivered them to a family near the window. The little girl asked for extra ketchup, and Sarah's hands shook as she grabbed bottles from the service station. Everything felt like it was happening in slow motion, and too fast at the same time. She could feel Marcus's eyes boring into her back. Could he tell something was different? Did he suspect? The grey-bearded man caught her attention as she passed. "Miss," he said quietly. Sarah stopped, her throat dry. "Could we get the check when you have a minute?" His eyes were serious, but not unkind. He gave her the smallest nod, a gesture that said, "We've got you." Sarah nodded back, relief washing over her so strongly she almost stumbled. "Right away," she managed to say. She printed their check with shaking hands. Whatever happened next, she wasn't alone anymore. She'd taken the first step, and there was no going back now. The question was, what would Marcus do when he realized she'd found help? The bikers paid their check but didn't leave. They moved to different seats, spreading out through the diner in a way that seemed casual but clearly wasn't. The grey-bearded man took a booth with a clear view of both Sarah and Marcus. 2 others sat at the counter, and another pair moved to a table near the door. Sarah understood what they were doing. They were positioning themselves, getting ready for something. The realization made her both grateful and terrified. Marcus noticed the change immediately. His expression shifted from smug to suspicious. He sat up straighter, his hand moving to his pocket, where Sarah knew he kept a knife. She'd seen it before, seen him use it to scare her when words weren't enough. The thought of violence erupting in the diner made her want to run to the back and hide. But she couldn't. She had to finish her shift. She had to see this through. Pete approached her at the service station. "You okay, Sarah? You look pale." She wanted to tell him everything. to let the words pour out about Marcus and the threats and the fear that had consumed her life for months. But the words stuck in her throat. "I'm fine," she lied again. "Just tired." Pete didn't look convinced. But he let it go, heading back to the kitchen. Sarah realized she'd been lying for so long that the truth felt foreign, dangerous. Admitting she needed help had felt like admitting defeat. The diner's other customers began to leave, the dinner rush winding down. Soon there were only a handful of people left: Marcus, the bikers, and an elderly couple finishing their meal. Sarah cleaned tables, trying to stay busy, trying not to think about what would happen when her shift ended in 40 minutes. Marcus sent another text: "Tick-tock, better have my money ready." She didn't respond. Responding only made things worse. One of the bikers, a tall man with tattoos covering his arms, approached Marcus's booth. "Excuse me, buddy," he said. "You gonna order something, or you just taking up space?" His tone was friendly, but there was an edge to it. Marcus stood up, squaring his shoulders. "I'm waiting for someone." "That a problem?" The biker smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just saying, the lady's working hard. Seems like you're making her nervous." The tension in the diner spiked. Sarah froze, a tray of dirty dishes in her hands. This was it. This was where everything would either escalate or diffuse. Marcus looked around the diner, finally noticing how the bikers had positioned themselves. His face darkened with understanding. "Sarah," he called out. "Did you say something to these guys?" His voice was dangerous, controlled anger bubbling beneath the surface. Sarah opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The grey-bearded man stood up slowly. "The lady doesn't need to say anything," he said calmly. "We can see what's going on here. And we're not going anywhere until she gets off work safely." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't know what you're getting into, old man." The grey-bearded man stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "Trust me, son. We know exactly what we're doing. Question is, do you?" Marcus's hand stayed in his pocket. Sarah could see him calculating, trying to figure out his next move. He was outnumbered, and he knew it, but Marcus had never backed down from anything in his life. That was part of what made him so dangerous. "This is none of your business," he said to the grey-bearded man. "This is between me and her. She owes me money." "She doesn't owe you anything," the grey-bearded man replied. His voice was steady, calm, like he'd been in situations like this 100 times before. "And you're going to leave this diner right now, and you're not going to come back. You're not going to contact her. You're not going to go near her family. You're done." Marcus laughed again, pulling his hand from his pocket. But instead of the knife Sarah expected, he held up his phone. "You think you scare me? You have no idea who you're messing with." The tall biker with the tattoos moved closer. "We know exactly who we're messing with. A coward who threatens women and kids. That about cover it." Marcus's face flushed red. "You're making a mistake," he said, but his voice wavered slightly. Sarah recognized that tone. It was the sound of Marcus realizing he might not win this fight. She'd never heard it before, and the novelty of it made her almost dizzy with hope. Pete emerged from the kitchen, taking in the scene. "What's going on out here?" The grey-bearded man turned to him. "Just resolving a situation. This man was bothering your waitress. We're making sure he leaves peacefully." Pete looked at Sarah, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. He saw the fear in her eyes, the way she was standing with her arms wrapped around herself protectively. Understanding dawned on his face. "Sarah, is this true?" Sarah found her voice. It came out smaller than she wanted, but it came out. "Yes. He's been threatening me. He threatened my little brother." The words felt strange, like she was speaking a foreign language. But once they started, they kept coming. "I've been afraid to tell anyone. He said he'd hurt my family if I went to the police. He's been taking my money, showing up everywhere I go. I can't get away from him." Marcus's expression turned ugly. "You're going to regret this," he said to Sarah. "You have no idea what you just did." But the grey-bearded man stepped between them. "The only person with regrets is going to be you if you don't walk out that door right now." Two more bikers stood up, flanking Marcus on either side. The message was clear: leave now, or be made to leave. For a long moment, nobody moved. The elderly couple near the window got up quickly, leaving money on their table and hurrying out. Sarah couldn't blame them. The air felt electric, like lightning about strike. Marcus looked at Sarah one more time, his eyes full of promises of revenge. Then he looked at the bikers surrounding him, doing the math. "This isn't over," he said finally, but he turned and walked toward the door. Sarah watched him go, her legs suddenly weak. The grey-bearded man held up a hand. Jimmy, Tom, follow him to his car. Make sure he actually leaves. Two of the bikers nodded and followed Marcus out into the parking lot. Sarah collapsed into the nearest booth, her legs unable to hold her anymore. Pete brought her water, his hand on her shoulder. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Sarah shook her head, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "I was scared. I thought I could handle it. I thought if I just gave him what he wanted, he'd leave me alone, but it kept getting worse." Pete squeezed her shoulder. "We're calling the police. Right now." The grey-bearded man sat down across from her. "My name's Jack," he said. "Those guys outside will keep an eye on things until the cops get here. But your friend's right. You need to file a report." Tonight, while there are witnesses, Sarah wiped her eyes. "He said he has connection. He said the police can't protect me." Jack's expression softened. "I used to be a cop, 25 years on the force before I retired. I know how these guys think. They say that to keep you scared, to keep you quiet, but it's mostly talk." The two bikers came back inside. "He's gone," the tattooed one reported. "But he sat in his car for a few minutes first. Made some phone calls. We got his plate number." Jack nodded. "Good. Give that to the police when they arrive." Sarah looked at these men who had helped her, these strangers who had no reason to get involved but did anyway. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you help me?" Jack was quiet for a moment. "My daughter was in a situation like yours about 10 years ago," he finally said. "Different guy, same story. She was too scared to ask for help. By the time she did, she was in the hospital, nearly died." His voice was heavy with old pain. "She survived, got away from him eventually. But I swore then that if I ever saw someone else going through the same thing, I wouldn't look away. None of us would." The other bikers nodded. Sarah realized they all had stories, all had reasons for stepping in. "We ride together," one of them said. "We watch out for people who need watching out for. That's what we do." Sarah felt tears coming again. But this time, they were different. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of the overwhelming emotion of not being alone anymore. Two police cars pulled into the parking lot, their lights flashing. Sarah's stomach clenched with anxiety, but Jack patted her hand. "It's okay," he said. "Just tell them the truth. All of it. The threats, the money, the bruises. Everything." Pete produced the diner's security footage. "It's all recorded," he said. "Every time he came in here. Every time he grabbed you. I've got it all." Sarah hadn't known the cameras worked. She'd thought they were just for show. The police officers came inside, and Sarah told her story. It took over an hour, with officers writing down every detail, asking questions, looking at the bruises she'd been hiding. Jack and the other bikers gave statements about what they'd witnessed. Pete handed over the security footage. When it was done, one of the officers told Sarah they'd be issuing a restraining order immediately and would be bringing Marcus in for questioning. "You did the right thing," the officer said. "Coming forward is the hardest part." Sarah's shift had ended hours ago, but she stayed at the diner too wired to go home. Jack and several of the bikers stayed with her, drinking coffee and making sure she felt safe. "What if he comes back?" Sarah asked. "What if the restraining order doesn't stop him?" Jack pulled out his phone. "Give me your number and your mom's address. We'll make sure you and your family are looked after for the next few weeks. We know a lot of people in this town. Good people. We'll spread the word that you're under protection." Sarah didn't know what to say. These men had already done so much. "I can't ask you to." Jack interrupted her. "You're not asking. We're offering. There's a difference." He showed her his phone, which already had a group chat with about 30 people in it. "See? I've already sent word out. You got folks looking out for you now? Marcus tries anything, he'll have a lot of people to answer to." Pete insisted on driving Sarah home, with two of the bikers following on their motorcycles. When they arrived at her apartment, they checked every room, making sure it was secure. Jack gave her his card. "You call me, day or night, if anything happens." "Anything at all." Sarah took the card, holding it like a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Jack hugged her, brief but genuine. "You saved yourself tonight," he said. "You made the choice to ask for help. That took courage. Don't forget that." Over the next few weeks, Sarah's life began to change. Marcus was arrested on multiple charges: harassment, threats, assault. His connections turned out to be as empty as Jack had suspected. Sarah tittered at the hearing, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. The judge issued a 5-year restraining order and Marcus received probation with mandatory counseling. If he violated the order or committed any new offense, he'd go to jail. But more than the legal protection, Sarah found something else: a community. The bikers checked in on her regularly. Jack introduced her to his daughter, who'd survived her own abusive relationship. They talked 4-4, sharing stories, sharing strength. Pete gave Sarah a raise and adjusted her schedule so she never worked alone at night. Her co-workers, once they knew the truth, rallied around her. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't alone. Sarah's brother, Danny, noticed the change in her. "You seem different," he said one day. "Happier." Sarah smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I am," she said. "I finally stopped being scared." It wasn't completely true. She still had moments of anxiety, still checked over her shoulder sometimes. But the constant terror was gone, replaced by something she'd almost forgotten: hope. 3 months after that night at the diner, Sarah was working when a family came in. They had a teenage daughter who seemed nervous, looking over her shoulder at a young man sitting in a car outside. Sarah alerted the signs immediately. During the meal, she slipped the girl her phone number on a napkin. "If you ever need help," she whispered, "call me. I mean it." The girl's eyes widened with understanding and relief. She nodded, pocketing the napkin. As Sarah walked away, she thought about that night, about how everything changed, because she made one brave choice. She thought about Jack and the bikers, about Pete and the cameras she didn't know were recording, about all the people who'd stepped up when she finally asked for help. Sometimes help came from unexpected places, sometimes strangers became heroes, and sometimes all it took was a note on a napkin to change everything. The restaurant's door chimed as more customers arrived. Sarah grabbed her order pad, ready to work. But this time she stood a little taller. This time she knew she wasn't alone, and this time, if she saw someone else who needed help, she'd be ready to offer it, because that's what people did. They looked out for each other. They showed up when it mattered. And they proved that even in the darkest moments, courage could light the way forward. Sarah had been terrified when she dropped that note on Jack's table, but that fear had led to freedom. That moment of desperation had led to connection, and that single act of bravery had started a chain reaction that changed not just her life, but the lives of everyone around her. She learned that asking for help wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing she'd ever done. 6 months passed, and Sarah barely recognized her own life. The apartment she'd once shared with fear now felt like home. She'd redecorated, painting the walls a warm yellow that made every room feel knit. Danny came over twice a week for dinner, and they'd started a tradition of watching movies together on Fridays. Her mom visited less anxiously now, no longer worried about finding bruises or seeing that haunted look in Sarah's eyes. Jack and his riding group, who called themselves the Road Knights, had become regular fixtures at Miller's Diner. They came in every Tuesday, the same night Sarah had asked them for help. It became their teddy ears, a reminder of how connections could form in the most unexpected moments. Jack's daughter, Marie, had become one of Sarah's closest friends. They'd started a support group for survivors of domestic violence, meeting twice a month at the community center. The group started small, just 5 women sitting in a circle, sharing stories they'd been too afraid to tell anyone else. But word spread. Within 3 months, they had 20 regular members. Some women came alone, others brought friends or family members who wanted to understand. Sarah found purpose in these meetings, sharing her story over and over, watching other women realize they weren't alone either. Each meeting reminded her why that terrifying moment of dropping the note had been worth it. But recovery wasn't a straight line. Some days were harder than others. Sarah would see someone who looked like Marcus from behind, and her chest would tighten. She'd hear a motorcycle that wasn't the Road Knights, and she'd freeze. Her therapist, Dr. Chen, told her this was normal. "Healing takes time," she said during one session. "You're rebuilding trust in the world. That doesn't happen overnight." Sarah appreciated the honesty. She was tired of people telling her she should be over it by now. The diner had changed too. Pete had installed better lighting in the parking lot, and a panic button behind the counter. He'd started asking employees directly if they felt safe, creating an environment where people could speak up. 2 other waitresses had quietly come to Sarah after her story became known in the diner, confiding their own situations. Sarah had connected them with resources, shared Jack's number, and reminded them that asking for help was brave, not weak. One evening, Sarah was clearing tables when a woman walked in alone. She was probably in her 30s, well-dressed, but something about her body language caught Sarah's attention. The woman kept glancing at her phone, her jaw tight with tension. She ordered coffee, but barely touched it. Sarah had seen that look before, in the mirror, back when Marcus controlled her life. She approached the table carefully. "Everything okay with your order?" she asked. The woman looked up, and Sarah saw tears threatening to spill. "It's fine," she said quickly. Too quickly. Sarah hesitated, then made a decision. She pulled out one of the cards she now carried in her apron pocket, cards with the support group information and crisis hotline numbers. "I don't mean to intrude," Sarah said softly, "but if you ever need someone to talk to, these people helped me when I didn't think anyone could." She set the card on the table and walked away, giving the woman space to decide. 20 minutes later, as Sarah was refilling salt shakers, the woman approached the counter. "The card," she said quietly. "You said these people helped you." Sarah nodded. "They saved my life, literally." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My husband checks my phone. He monitors my credit cards. I told him I was meeting a friend tonight, but I just drove around for an hour trying to find the courage to tell someone that I'm scared of my own husband." Sarah's heart ached with recognition. They talked for 30 minutes. Sarah on her break, the woman whose name was Jennifer pouring out a story Sarah knew too well. The controlling behavior, the isolation, the threats disguised as love. When Jennifer finally left, she had Jack's number, the support group meeting times, and something else: hope. Sarah watched her drive away, remembering how Jack had watched her that same way 6 months ago, making sure she got home safe. The next Tuesday, when the road knights came in for their regular dinner, Sarah told Jack about Jennifer. "She might call you," Sarah said. "She's in a bad situation." Jack nodded seriously. "We'll be ready." "You did good, Sarah. You're paying it forward." Sarah hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. She'd received help when she desperately needed it, and now she could offer that same help to others. The cycle of fear could become a cycle of healing. Jennifer did call 3 days later. Jack and Marie helped her create a safety plan. Within 2 weeks, Jennifer had moved in with her sister 2 towns over and filed for divorce. She started coming to the set group meetings, sitting quietly at first, then gradually sharing her story. Sarah watched Jennifer's transformation the same way Marie had watched hers, the slow rebuilding of a person who'd been torn down by someone who claimed to love them. The local newspaper ran a story about the support group, focusing on how a community had rallied around survivors of domestic violence. They interviewed Sarah, Jack, and Pete. Sarah had been nervous about going public with her story, worried about judgment, or somehow attracting Marcus's attention again. But Dr. Chen encouraged her. "Your story might help someone else find courage," she said. And she was right. After the article ran, 5 new women joined the support group. 2 men called, asking if there were resources for male survivors too. The conversation was growing. Marcus violated his restraining order once, showing up at Danny's school. But this time, things were different. The school had been notified about the order. They called the police immediately. Marcus was arrested and sentenced to 6 months in jail. When Sarah heard the news, she felt a weight lift that she hadn't even realized she was still carrying. He couldn't hurt her anymore. The law had finally protected her the way it was supposed to. On the anniversary of the night she'd dropped the note on Jack's table, Sarah organized a thank you dinner at Miller's Diner. Pete closed the restaurant to the public for the evening. Sarah invited everyone who'd helped her, Jack and the road knights, Marie, Shan, the police officers who'd taken her statement, even some members of the support group who wanted to celebrate her journey. The diner was packed with people laughing, sharing food, telling stories. Jack stood up to give a toast. A year ago, a scared young woman made the bravest choice of her life. She asked for help, and in doing that, she reminded all of us why we ride, why we show up, why we care. Sarah, you didn't just save yourself that night. You inspired all of us to be better, to pay more attention, to never look away when someone needs help. Thank you for your courage. Everyone raised their glasses. Sarah wiped away tears, but they were good tears this time. As the evening wound down, Sarah stood outside the diner with Jack, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. "I never thought I'd feel safe again," she admitted. "Some days I still can't believe this is my life now." Jack smiled. "You built this life. We just helped with the foundation. Everything else, that's all you." Sarah nodded, understanding what he meant. The help had been crucial, but the work of healing, of rebuilding, of learning to trust again, that had been hers to do. Danny joined them, throwing his arm around Sarah's shoulders. "Best sister ever," he said. Sarah laughed, hugging him back. She thought about the terrified woman she'd been a year ago. Month, she was trapped. Certain there was no way out, she wished she could go back and tell that woman what she knew now. Help was possible, escape was possible, and life on the other side of fear was worth fighting for. But since she couldn't do that, she'd do the next best thing. She'd keep showing up, keep sharing her story, keep passing cards to women who wore that same haunted look she used to see in the mirror.